Okay, welcome everybody to Office Hours with Ian Wilson of Portland Edible Gardens. It's top of the hour, so we're gonna get started, and I wanted to just do a little celebrating Ian. He's one of our kind of veterans in this community. He's owned and
I don't know
started.
when and how that happened.
Well, you've been around longer than most business owners, right? Like 9 years, 10 years?
Yeah, 10 plus, yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, not many people in this community have been around that long. So, um, yeah, Ian, we'd love to just like hear a little bit about you and your business, and then we can go into questions.
Yeah, sure. Welcome all. Um, so yeah, my business is Portland Edible Gardens, and we're really focused on annual vegetable gardens. Started this business, yeah, about 10 years ago. And before that, I spent about 10 years working on and managing organic farms in a bunch of different places. But I grew up here in Portland and always intended to come back here. And I thought I wanted to be a farmer for a long time, and then finally came up against many of the obstacles that farmers come up against, especially the ones without land. And I grew up in the city here, and so yeah, just kind of came upon this idea as a way to kind of honor the skills that I had built and kind of saw a need in a city that really values food and organics and all the all those different kind of values, but there weren't really options for people to get really hands-on support in actually growing a vegetable garden. And so, yeah, I just kind of got going and 10 years later, we're still a pretty small business. We have about three full-time employees, and then seasonally we'll add another two or three. And most of what we do is there's kind of two sides of the business: building garden beds, installing infrastructure for people, and then supporting them in creating plans for those spaces and following up with hands-on support. And so yeah, I'm very conscious that like even though we're all foodscapers, like everyone has such a different angle in here. So I definitely want to be like, I'm curious what other people are doing, and I want to answer people's questions in a way that's going to help them in their
Yeah.
particularities.
Yeah, I'm curious, Ian, if like before you transition from farmer to foodscaper, like if there was like a business or an individual that like inspired you to do this, like how do you even get this idea to do this?
Yeah, there were a couple of businesses in Portland that were doing this sort of thing before we were, and I mean one of them was doing it for many, many years. But so I it wasn't like I just came up with this idea out of nowhere. And so there was a reference point, but then I was like, that looks really interesting. But then when I looked at the particular ways that those businesses were going about it, I felt like I had something kind of unique to offer. And I felt, I mean, honestly, like I felt like I could do it better in
Yeah.
a way.
Well, with so
So
much farming background, that's like such a solid foundation, that's
yeah.
yeah, and maybe we're gonna be talking about getting ready for spring, and because we have a smaller group, which is kind of nice, I think. Um, I'm gonna start off with some questions for Ian, but of course we welcome you. That's kind of the whole gist of this is coming to Ian with questions, but we welcome you to come off mute and show yourself if you want to pop on camera, and we can kind of have more of like a conversation here instead of I always love hearing where people are coming from when they join these office hours. It's pretty interesting. So,
Hi, Dan.
hey Dan, thanks for showing yourself. Um, so okay, we're going to be talking about getting ready for spring, and I wanted to talk about, well, I guess I'm curious, Ian, like is spring typically a crazy season for you as a business owner? I would
Yeah.
imagine the answer is yes.
Yes, yes. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what kind of systems have you set up for yourself to like make it less so, to make it a little bit less insane?
Yeah. There's certainly, I mean, as the years have gone by, we've definitely gotten better at having a lot of just like different uh all the things in place in terms of like having a really clear plan and having the right tools and physical materials ready. Honestly, I think one of the biggest things that has been helpful is just looking for opportunities to spread the like spring is just reliably like you can watch people's brains turn on, like the sun comes out and hello. Hi Carissa. And like the inquiries come in and then like it's cold and like it's quiet and like people are very reactive, and so there's always this flood of interest. And so one thing we do with return clients is as soon as the season closes, I'm pretty assertive and like following up with them and trying to figure out like what they're interested in as far as like the next year and really try to get all those pieces in place. Um, in the vegetable gardens, an important thing that we're doing is this kind of annual soil amendment. Hi, Boris. Um, and so we used to like show up with the plants and the compost and like dig the compost in and plant with people for the first time. And, now we do a bunch of soil amendment in February, rain or shine, as like a separate visit in people's gardens. And that small tweak was like, okay, now we can bill like two different visits and we can spread the workload out. Um, and, in the same token, like doing more aggressive marketing in like January 1st. Like you can't get through to anyone in December, and I don't want to work in December either. So like January 1st, we're like, hello, 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 like this is happening. Like don't contact us in March, contact us now. Um, off-season like specials like for installation. We can build raised garden beds 365 days a year. It might not be as pleasant, but like trying to offer incentives for people to like, do the things that we can that aren't as like dependent on the season. There are a few
Yeah.
ideas. Hi,
Yeah.
Jeff and Roxanne. Thanks for coming.
Anybody new? I know that our team at Custom Foodscaping always struggles with that marketing message. It's like in like the late fall, we're like trying to get people to think about spring and no one's thinking about that. And then like in March or like April or May, even people are like, can I get a garden in? And we're like, we no, like too
Yeah.
late. It's hard to turn away that business, but it's kind of a weird thing in this industry. You have to think like 4 or 5 months ahead sometimes.
Mhm.
But yeah, I was curious if you all have other like tools that you have, and that could be like internal systems, like communication stuff, that you've invested in to help you get like to maximize jobs, get more business, or even just like have a better install day. That's a big question.
Have a better install.
Like a smoother install
Yeah.
process.
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing I learned early on when it was just like me and a truck and like I was doing all the things is like if you have the capital, especially with like physical tools and stuff, if it's like a tool that's like less than $50 and you think it might help, I just got in the habit of like buying those things. And that has paid off huge. And then, eventually, like as we got rolling a little bit, um, like adding like a little truck box to the one truck that we had, so it wasn't, so the cab wasn't like full of tools. Like that was a more expensive thing, but it was like, yes, that was worth it. And now we have, three trucks, and that's like the biggest like overhead expense aside from our wood shop is all these trucks that some of them we only use for 4 months out of the year or something. and that's when you get into those bigger kind of investments, you need to be really a lot more conscientious about them. But so that's on the physical side. On the digital side, like we use Slack a lot. That's something that we started using 4 or 5 years ago. That's been a huge as far as like both like having records. We use it as a record for every client. So we have a record of like what we've planted and like photos of their garden through time. And Slack's been really helpful in terms of kind of like a way to aggregate different clients. Um, Also, like an early thing that I adopted was just using digital contracts, which maybe is just like what everyone does now. But initially,
Mm,
I'd like get someone to sign something and like go track them down. And I mean, just we use HelloSign.
mm,
There's lots of different things, but like if someone's like, yes, I want to do this, getting a contract like the same day is like really helps with the flow.
mm.
Um, and of course, like Google Calendar, Google Drive, Google.
Google. Totally. All
Google,
Google. We use
Google.
the same way at Custom Foodscaping.
Yeah.
Yeah, Slack is amazing. I don't know what we would do without it. It's just like the best. I know Nashville Foodscapes really uses Slack like all day too.
Yeah.
Um, guys, I'm just asking Ian stuff that I'm curious about, but please hop in if you
Yeah,
have questions.
please do. Who has questions?
And feel free to, yeah, take yourself off mute and just hop in. It's
Sure,
off.
I'll jump
Go
in.
ahead.
Uh, I really enjoyed your presentation from, I think it was 2020, whatever, not the one that just happened, but the one
Yeah.
before
Oh,
that I was
thanks.
catching up on before they all went away. I was wondering, what do you do for advertising? Do you pay for ads?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's not a lot. I mean, for many years it was not at all. And the one paid channel that we use really consistently is just Google Ads for the raised garden beds in particular. I mean, one of the wonderful things about being a foodscaper is having a very local environment like that you're working in. I think that's such a huge thing. And so it's so nice not to like since we're not selling seminars or like things, what our services are like hyper local. So it depends on what you're doing, but like the raised beds in particular, there's a lot of like cheap, modular, attractive raised beds that are like suddenly on the market. And so I think that's like been a little bit more of a competition that we didn't have before. And so for us, it's worthwhile to try to get in front of people who are looking for raised beds and be like, no, actually, there's a really good reason to like have someone else build a quality bed and like, and what soil are you going to put in it? Because that's actually hugely important. And what about irrigation? So um, that we use. I've done a few different like Instagram campaigns, but honestly, vast majority of what we do is just organic with social media and referrals at this point, like this far in. But that's something, even as I'm speaking, it's something we revisit all the time, and I feel very not an authority on this, and I still question if we have the right approach. I mean, one thing like 2020 was like a huge year, our biggest year ever, in the pandemic, and 2021 too, and we kind of like did some scaling up, and I just sort of expected this is just how it's going to be, and then actually like 2022, I felt like there was sort of like the wave receded and there was all the pent up garden excitement had been tapped out. And that was kind of a slow year for us. And for the first time, I was like, wait a minute, we need a strategy here on marketing. So yeah, that's what we do, but I'm not sure if it's the right thing or not.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Looks like Dan's got a question. Thanks for your question, Boris. That's good.
Yeah, so my question is about how to transition from primarily like a design build pipeline of work into more of the maintenance and caretaking side of things. Like how do you get people hooked on that, and how do you kind of build that program, the maintenance and caretaking program, like from a bigger I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think how to ask that question, but like most of my experience in this work has been, building the gardens, installing them, or installing landscaping. And I
Yeah.
would love to build out a maintenance program. I just kind of don't know how to get past the like, oh, you need help with your garden? I could do that. And
Yeah.
then, and so like, what's the next step beyond that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And, our business, I mean, we are so specialized on vegetable gardens, so it's going to be different if you have more perennial focus. But in a way, we have two businesses, and operationally they're sort of disconnected. Like we have an install team that builds infrastructure, and then we have like a team of garden mentors and garden teachers that are planting and tending those gardens. And for the first 5 years of the business, the installation side was like much more revenue than maintenance and mentorship. Uh, and that was just because we didn't have a lot of clients. I mean, part of our model is to teach people how to grow their own food, and if we do a really good job of that, then there's plenty of people who like they use us for a year or two, and then they have the skills they need. They might still get us for like some spring soil amendment or a little bit here and there. But we also have this kind of maintenance approach, which is just doing the same things, but for people growing that vegetable garden. And those people love us and they need us, and they have no reason to stop using our services. And over 10 years, like the combination of those, what we call mentorship and maintenance clients, has continued to grow. And that's actually now a bigger, a more profitable part of the business than the installations. But it's definitely not something that is built overnight. And as far as like how to do it, um, I mean, when we started this, I didn't have any experience with the installation stuff, but it was clear that the raised beds were going to be a way to both monetize like building things for people, but honestly, I mean, more importantly, and to the point, like taking away obstacles that people face in being successful in growing vegetables. And so that has been like a huge kind of added piece. But I just felt confident in my ability to grow a really healthy vegetable garden for people, and that's what they wanted. And so yeah, I just like, I mean, now we have a very clear system around that where we're creating planting plans for people that are a template for exactly what we're planting in their vegetable garden. And that's a really specialized thing that we do, but it's also a thing that we can hand off to any garden mentor who has basic, solid horticultural knowledge, and for them to implement with a client. So that has been really helpful in making it something I can hand off to someone else. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I just started kind of building this program of like I'll be there once a month. I'll bring the plants, I'll bring the seeds, like we'll follow this plan and we'll be done in October. And then people just kind of kept coming back for that, and we've just refined that system over time. I don't know if that, I hope that's helpful.
I have a
Yeah.
question on top of that. Or Dan, does that answer your question? Is that helpful?
Yeah, thank you.
I wondered, Ian, kind of what percentage, I know you guys are, like, sounds like your bread and butter is the raised bed stuff, the annuals. Are you guys doing a lot of perennial maintenance as well?
We are
Like,
not.
oh, you're not.
Um,
Okay, interesting.
we're not doing a lot of perennial stuff, and it's a thing that we talk about every year, and it's a thing that we do a little bit on the side. Um, Honestly, I think I am the biggest obstacle to that in our business. It's not, I mean, it is something that I built skills on many, many years ago, but it's not something that I've like maintained. So a part of it is just like my lack of like solid foundation in it and like commitment to investing in that part of our business. But I also think that there's, when you add perennial maintenance, on the one hand, it's great because it maybe fills in some, it happens on different time cycles, although some of them are very overlapping with the vegetables.
Mhm.
But it also just requires like different tools and different like, and trailers and hauling materials and ladders, and so we love planting like blueberries and raspberries and strawberries for people, and some perennial herbs, but and then fruit trees have all kinds of like pests and diseases, and growing the right things. And so yeah, 10 years in, we're still kind of like tunnel vision on the vegetables. Um, and it has definitely created challenges around staffing and like just the hyper seasonal nature of it. But we keep pulling it off and like incrementally growing it. So
That's awesome. I mean, there's
yeah,
such a I really appreciate you sharing that, because I think it can be really intimidating for people just getting into this, like, oh, I have to have all this perennial fruit tree knowledge, which is so like it's so much to know.
yeah,
And starting, I think the entry point is definitely like the kitchen garden, vegetable garden, and you were 10 years in and just that's your jam. That's awesome.
yeah,
And maybe you don't need to like necessarily have like, I think that's just a place people really get stuck and overwhelmed. So it's really
yeah.
cool to see you still doing that.
Hmm.
Um, okay, Rosina's got a question I'm gonna read out loud for the sake of the recording. She says, I have my first client this weekend. That's awesome. He bought 600 plants and just wants to plant them. Would you still do a consult beforehand or just start planting? Should I make him sign a contract first? I'm not sure how long it's going to take to plant, so I really can't give him an estimate. A lot of plants.
Whoa. Yeah, this is like, yeah, this is why I don't touch perennials.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, well, uh, I would definitely do a consult beforehand. Um, and I mean, I think one thing, I would want to know that the plants that they bought are appropriate for the space and are going to be successful. And I would want to have confidence about like the soil that they're going into. I mean, this really brings up for me something that like we have stayed true to at, I don't know, maybe a pathological level, which is just like it's part of it is like my own control issues, I guess, but like the reason that we're not a much bigger business than we are is that I it's been important to me at like every step of our business that whatever we're doing at like a really high quality, and that people are going to be really successful. And there have been so many opportunities along the way to like diversify, or like, what if you did this? Or someone is like, can you do this for me? Like, I have a huge budget. Like, can you do this? And it's very tempting sometimes to say like, yes, because it seems like, an opportunity for growth, but it's a real fine line. And so I would say, you know, if you feel, yeah, that consultation is going to give you a lot of information about like, is this a is this well thought out? Is this something I feel qualified to do? Is this going to be successful? And if so, like, yeah, set yourself a good hourly rate that and I mean definitely do that hourly and go get it. But I would want some more information first.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Ian. That's good. That's a good response. Um, Jeff gave some feedback as well about charging plants in the chat, so you guys can read that. Angela's asking could you talk about how you source plants? Good question. I am worried about finding a reliable and dependable source. Do you grow some if you're of your own inventory?
Mhm.
And also, do you ever grow berries over a seeding area on a trellis? Different question. Let's talk about
Hmm.
sourcing first.
Yeah. Again, this is probably different because we're almost exclusively annual vegetables, and we have amazing nurseries here in Portland. For many, many years, I just bought from like the best like retail nurseries and like upcharged to the clients because we have really specific plans that call for particular plants at a particular time. And then we reached a volume where we're able to purchase directly from the wholesalers that feed those nurseries, and that has been a huge help. Again, 10 years in, we still don't grow any of our own plants. And I mean, if you can do it, there's great incentives. Obviously, you can save a lot of money that way, but the liabilities of growing baby plants, it's just like a whole nother thing. And especially annual vegetables, like growing things from seeds in a greenhouse, um, just has required a level of oversight or complexity that has been overwhelming. I still think we need to just like there's certain things where it would make sense, like let's just grow some flats of onions or like things that are hardy and hard to mess up and low cost. But we just pass that cost and complexity on to the nurseries and our clients. But perennials are a whole different story, and I can't really speak to that as much.
I
Um,
can, Angela, I'm gonna put a link here in the chat. We have a list of nurseries on the Foodscaper that we have found to be dependable. I mean, everyone does this a different way, and yeah, Ian, like we're with you. The liability, like you said, is a huge thing of, yeah, it's a lot to take on, especially if you don't have the space. Like the renting of a nursery space is a huge cost. So I'm really loving hearing from you Ian, and like all these, like I can tell you've thought a lot about like cutting out all the fat of your business and where like the waste could be. And this is like unlike some of the companies that we work with, they have these like huge nurseries and wood shops, and I find that like they end up like cutting them out because we're doing that at Custom Foodscaping. It's just so expensive to have space to rent to like have a big nursery. So it's awesome.
mhm.
Okay, wait, Angela, also, I don't want to miss your question about growing berries over a seating area on a trellis.
Over a seating area. I guess it would depend on what the berries were. Again, there's probably people here who could speak to this better than me, but I mean, it seems like something like grapes could be a good option. But a lot of the like cane berries and stuff are, um, I guess you could do like blackberries or like kiwis or like a major thing if we're talking about like shade. But I don't know. You could probably you want to speak to that, Lindsay? I don't.
Sure. We've done that at some installs at restaurants with grapes. I think we've used the Edelweiss grape variety. I can follow up with you though, Angela, if you want to email me. But yeah, hardy kiwi isn't as reliable in our region. It's just like not as robust as the grape. So, um, we haven't, I can't think of an install where we've done berries over in a seating area. I have to think about that, but grapes would be the go-to. Sounds like you too, Ian. Okay, yeah, let's talk about, Katie's got a question about hiring and finding quality employees. This is a really big subject, especially as the theme of this conversation pertains to like bringing on more labor in the spring. I'm curious how you go about that, Ian. And that's like seasonal labor.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good question. There's everyone has really different needs as far as labor. And so like the people who we hire to plant vegetables with our clients and provide like an educational service to them and work one-on-one with them in their garden, that's a really specialized role. And we need someone who checks a lot of boxes. I mean, most importantly, they need to like have that horticultural knowledge, but also most importantly, they need to be like friendly and sensitive and reliable and so that's like those are hard things to fill. And for the first time in all of the years of the business, we're like retaining like the three people who are doing that are all coming back this spring, which is like, and it's just luck. Like they were able to do off-season stuff, but it's like amazing. And so retaining quality employees, I mean, the best way to do that is to provide like full-time work. And I have one person now who I can do that with on the vegetable side, who's doing a lot more administration and back end stuff. But that's tough. We've used Good Food Jobs is a great. You guys ever use that resource? That's a
Yeah,
cool.
yes. That is a great place to look. Good food jobs. Yeah.
Yeah, we've gotten really quality people from there, kind of from far and wide. Um, and I've used Indeed some. It's like frustrating and weird. But that has been okay. Honestly, the best has been like we do get people who just reach out through the year and are just like, you seem like a cool business. Like, do you have any positions? And I just like I they have their own folder in my email, and whenever a position comes up, I just like send an email, BCC a bunch of like people who've expressed interest at some point in the past, and that's been really helpful. Also, just like personal references from people who we uh, of existing employees has been really helpful. It's so nice to have some personal reference, but yeah, it's challenging. Anyone else have ideas about that?
Yeah, I'd love to hear other people's thoughts on hiring and sourcing employees. Ian, I was wondering like if you have tips about like vetting people when you're hiring, like if you have them do like a I don't know, a planting day with you or just
Yes,
yeah,
great
okay,
question.
okay.
Uh, I have never been more humbled that I don't trust your instincts about people. I just I don't know. I in most of my life, I think intuition and like, trust and like, whatever, giving people the benefit of the doubt. But I have gotten burned
Mm.
by doing that in my role as a business owner. And so two things. One, like I I always call references. I've made the mistake of not doing, I like have called references after something has gone wrong, and people have been like, oh yeah, you should have called me.
Oops.
Um, and then also it's harder with the vegetable garden side, but on the install side with something that's a little bit more just that doesn't require like one-on-one with clients, we always have people out. Like I always just say, if someone seems interested, we just get them out, we pay them cash for a day, have them work with the crew. If it's great, I usually pay them cash for another day. Sometimes we'll do that for like a week or two, and just as like a see if it works for them, see if it works for us, and then hire them. And then, on the termination side, like definitely have learned a lot of lessons about that. And uh, someone, I think it might have been a Foodscaper messaging that was like, hire slowly, fire quickly, or something.
Quickly, yeah. Yeah.
And that's a really, really hard thing to do. And that gets into, but yeah, if it's not working, it's not working. And even though like terminating employees has been some of the hardest things I've like ever had to do, and sometimes it's felt like, oh, this is gonna like, this is gonna cause so many problems and be so hard. But then the minute it's done, it's like there's clarity, like, yes, that was the right thing to do. It's actually worth all the other problems that it brings. So yeah.
That's good. All right, Carissa, you have a question and you're welcome to hop on or whatever. I don't know what to say. Get off mute. Yeah. Speak up if you want to.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for sharing, Ian and Lindsay as well, and everyone else who has shared. I have a question. Actually, sorry, before that, I used to hire for a large-scale greenhouse and fieldwork seasonally for legal cannabis in Canada. One of my biggest tips was to reach out to the local college or school that offers horticulture programs and reach out and see if there's any students that wanted a part-time, full-time or part-time job during the season. And some of my best employees were found through that. So that might be an option for people as well. Yeah. I have questions about the maintenance side of things. Again, like how Dan had asked about maintenance. How frequently do you do maintenance programs, I guess? Is it biweekly, monthly, seasonally?
Yeah.
And what do you charge for that? And if no number, that's fine. But do you give a discount more so for signing up, kind of like a subscription service, I guess, for maintenance?
Yeah, great question. So this is something that has been refined a lot over 10 years. And initially, I was just like, I know how to grow vegetables. Like, what do you need? You want like one off? You want like, you want me to come weekly? You want like, I'm there. I'll drive in every direction. And, I'd like quit my job and I was like, just needed to take on a lot more. As we've grown, we've refined that more and more. And now what that looks like is really the only way to get support with us where we're actually planting vegetables is to sign up for a full season of support. And that's for most people, that's every 4 weeks on a repeating schedule. So like Monday at 11 a.m., we're there. And that that kind of level of systematization has like really helped us. Like we can create a calendar that is coherent, like, and that fits really nicely. For maintenance clients, for people for whom we're just doing the work for them, for many of them, we're actually going every 2 weeks. And maintenance clients do tend to be kind of like higher, they have more disposable income and they're not like as attentive in their garden. So it really makes sense to be there every couple of weeks. I know there are places out there that have like a every week model. But for us, for vegetables, I mean, anything less than once a month is like so much happens in a garden. But more frequently than every 2 weeks, it feels a little bit fussy. So those have been really nice. And then of course, it's easy to kind of like mesh those schedules together. Yeah, and for the garden visits, the costs are kind of all inclusive. and include the starts and the seeds, and we bring, you know, organic amendments and all the tools that people would need. And those garden visits range anywhere from, like, for really small gardens, maybe $160, up to larger gardens are more like 250 plus per visit. And we're usually in a garden for anywhere from like 45 minutes to an hour and a half with like mentorship clients. And then we have a few random clients that just have mega gardens. And we bill those hourly with time and materials, because it's just harder to, I used to just give them a number, but then we'd be there for like, you know, super long, or it was hard to kind of budget that way. Yeah.
Jeff,
Thanks
do
so
you
much.
thanks so much, Carissa. Did you have a question related to this?
Yeah, real quick, on the bigger gardens, what's your hourly rate? But then also, going back, we've only done maintenance on a couple annual gardens,
Yeah.
just to kind of fill in. Like, we'll do every week for that first month, and then we go to an every other week through the rest of the season. And I think we come up with, in Iowa, we've got 4 months. So we do May, June, July, and August. And then by September, they're just harvesting kind of on their own. And it's pretty much the end of the season. So
Yeah, that's a pretty short season too. Like we're in gardens, you know, 1st of March through middle of October. We're doing like a cleanup visit. And actually, I mean, we can grow a lot of fall and winter vegetables here. And if that is an option, there's not as much planting or maintenance to do, but we have started offering a kind of like winter garden check-in visit.
nice.
Where it's, I mean, one thing that people don't realize before they start growing vegetables is just like how harvest is such a thing. And they're like, "Oh, I didn't realize like knowing when and how to harvest is such a thing." So, but on the hourly, it depends a little bit, but anywhere from like 80 to 100 an hour for some of these bigger clients.
Cool. Thanks,
Yeah.
guys. Okay,
Yeah.
next.
That's a higher like hourly than, you know, we would do for like when we're bidding a per visit client. I mean, that is one thing I'll say, like, in transparency, like most of what we do is not hourly. Most of what we do is just like, this is the cost of the service. But I flex that number. Yeah.
Yeah, I know that came up a lot at the conference, that people were saying, you know, they don't do an itemized breakdown, or like, here's how many hours, here's the cost. Just doing a lump sum tends to cause less disputes with the clients, or just like more questions and people trying to cut corners, and
Right.
yeah. Cool. Okay, Dan's got a question, and Dan, of course, you can hop on. Do you want to hop on, and or you want me to just read your question?
I think some of it just got answered, but I guess as much as you would want to share about the specifics of putting together an estimate for that service, you know, are you like looking at the exact number of plants you're going to have to buy for this person for a whole season, and then like adding you know, however many labor hours per month for each of those visits? Do they have like a payment plan, or do they pay it all up front? I'm just curious about the kind of some of the details of how you put together estimates for these projects.
It's I think I'm on the much more intuitive end of the spectrum compared to how some people do this stuff. I mean, on the install side, yeah, we have some kind of like baseline like prices for the beds that we've, you know, created based on cost of materials. But then a lot of the services, I'm just kind of imagining how many hours and like kind of applying an hourly rate. So yeah, it is very unscientific, I would say for us, but it's really different for other people I know.
We got a question next about, well, does that help you, Dan? Is that
Nope.
yeah. Well, okay.
If you want me to, I'll
Oh, go
answer.
ahead. You want to hop in? Yeah.
Yeah. So in the past, like for the perennial landscapes, we'd price out every plant, and then kind of just based on what we learned at first, I was using a website called homewise.com or .org, and it was kind of a landscaper pricing guide for rock and stuff like that. But then we would just we've adjusted that, and now I use a per plant price on planting. Um, there is some variation in plant costs at the wholesaler, but basically it's used to be like 4.15, now it's 5.5, something like that. So if we just go with like a unit price of $10 to $12 per gallon, and on the design, every plant will be listed, but we'll count it out. If I have 750 plants and they're all gallons, we may go 4-inch or gallons. I'll do 740 to 760 on the plants in that range. It's all calculated based on 750, but I don't price each one. I'll just kind of round it and do that. Bigger, like fruit trees, stuff like that, is all per unit. But once you get into the bigger ground covers and stuff, then we just go with per unit, and it saves calculating pricing. Used to watch Keith Kalfas, is a landscaper YouTuber. Totally not in our realm at all, but he's business minded. He's a hustler. Wholesale or retail price is 2x wholesale, and then install is double the same price as the retail cost. So if you've got a $4 plant, you charge $8 retail and $8 to plant it is rule of thumb, and then you'll have to adjust per your market and stuff like that. But just kind of as a rule of thumb to get started, that's what we do. If you want me to send you my kind of price calculator, I'm okay to do that if you want to just shoot me an email too. So
Great. Thanks for offering that, Jeff. Yeah. Remind me that guy's name that you just mentioned. YouTube.
Keith Kalfas, Kalfas.
Well, I'm gonna check him out. Keith Kalfas.
Yeah, he's in Michigan.
Okay, cool. That's so helpful. Katie, did you have a question on this thread?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that like doing estimates was probably our biggest uphill battle, is getting them correct for the work we're doing. And I really appreciate everybody's input on that. We do a similar thing as Jeff now, as far as, counting plants and having an average price per size. And then we just keep increasing our labor rate. Basically, it's my husband and I who run our business, and it's mostly perennial, edible landscapes, that kind of thing. But we kept forgetting overhead to calculate that in, and there's a lot of expenses and overhead costs, like things like rent, insurance, all that good stuff. And so we had to integrate that somewhere, and we ended up raising our daily labor rate. And so instead of having an hourly rate, we kind of look at a job and say, okay, how long is this going to take us to do? And we're estimate the days that we're going to be on site. If we have to travel a really long way, then we integrate mileage, but not if it's local. And so that's helped us cover some hidden costs that we might not have anticipated, is adding, maybe a couple $100 to our daily labor rate. So I don't know if that's helpful, but it's helped us kind of stay in the black over the last couple years.
That's awesome. Katie, what's your company?
It's called Regenerative Property Management.
Oh, okay, cool. That's really great. Yeah, I wanted to share also, like, we just announced yesterday, we're going to be, Matt Liebon with the Foodscaper is going to be teaching a a sourcing plants workshop in April for free. And that is we'll also be talking about like our pricing and like how we go from plant to budget kind of. So you can sign up for that. I'll put the link right there. But that's been like a really huge challenge. Like we at Custom Foodscaping, I think that the majority of our inventory comes from out of state, which is crazy. Like we just cannot get good quality foodscaping plants here. So everybody's trying to figure this out. So and the pricing, it's all a big challenge. So thank you all for sharing. So okay, there's like, wow, this went so fast, only 10 minutes left or so. There's like a conversation going on in the thread about licensing, being like a general contractor. And I know in the Pacific Northwest, in California, Oregon, Seattle, or Oregon and Washington, like you have to be like a licensed contractor to do this work. Is that true where you are, Ian?
Yeah, yeah, you need to be a landscape contractor and a landscape construction professional based on our scope
Okay.
of services. So I have
What
two
was
licenses.
what was the process like to do that?
It was brutal.
Really?
And actually, I think Washington is fairly unregulated. Last time I checked, but yeah, it was really was the hopefully last test that I have to take. But just like you had to, yeah, it was just like 7 different parts. I had to go back and take the test like 3 different times. The backflow, I had to get certified in like backflow and irrigation, and know all this stuff about industrial like backflow applications. And yeah, it was kind of terrible.
Yeah, that sounds terrible. I
Yeah.
guess people may be wondering, let me try to, does anyone have a question about this for Ian about getting licensed? Because it's like, it's not the case in every state. But I guess what I'm getting from the thread is like, it's worth it. Jeff is saying it's worth it. It seems like you sort of have to do it if you want to be in this work. So maybe maybe that's just what you like the process you have to go through. I'm just catching up on this thread.
In,
Okay,
in
cool.
Virginia, the issue is that you have to have 2 years of relevant experience, and a licensed contractor has to sign off on that.
Wow.
So if you've been doing it by yourself this whole time, it doesn't count. It's like
Yeah.
getting your CPA.
Yes. And how do you go about kind of finding like supervisors for to get licensed?
You have to go to a landscaper and work for them for 2 years,
I see. Okay.
which isn't real practical.
Yeah, that's crazy. I know someone had asked about like workarounds, but I can't think of one. I don't know how you would work around that.
Mhm.
Okay, cool. All right, we've gotten our last 5 minutes or so here with Ian. If anybody has other questions, I'm just like making sure I didn't miss anything. This has been a really good conversation. I've learned a lot. Cool. I had one other question in my notes here I wanted to ask you about. Let's see here. I guess my other curiosity with where you guys are in the country in Portland, like, are there other edible landscaping companies in Portland that are like competitors? Are you guys the only game in town, kind of?
There definitely are. There are people, it's been remarkably, it's funny, like with the perennial stuff, there are a couple of businesses that do specialize in fruit trees. One of them is like a good friend of mine, but both of them just are like maxed out. One of them on clients and like can't take anymore. And so there's sort of like that's like a surprising gap in the market here. On the vegetable side, there are a handful of small businesses that I'm aware of that are providing these sorts of services, but I'm not super familiar with them, and they're not like super visible to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I keep kind of pinching myself, but yeah, there's not a ton of competition within the annual vegetable realm.
That's really surprising to me. Like, that's amazing for you. I'm really happy for you. I hope may it stay that way.
Not complaining. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. Well, guys, I think we're going to wrap up here. I wanted to mention, and, on our team, we're always like feeling a little bit of a chip on our shoulder about that line between like promoting the Foodscaper as a project and like being grossed out about being salesy. And so in sincere authenticity, I want to mention a tool coming up this summer that is a mentorship course. It's going to be like kind of what we're doing with Ian on steroids, and it's with Matt Lebon. We're doing a whole 3-month mentorship course for big kind of entry stage foodscapers. I'm going to put details about this in the chat. And yeah, I think this is a mentorship that would be beneficial for somebody who is wanting to start a business or kind of in like the 1 to 2 year stage of business. So there's details there. We just have a sign up list now. And I wanted to just tell you about it because we're really excited and we've gotten a ton of interest. So we'll be opening registration, I think, in May. So that's what's going on with the Foodscaper. And we have 2 more webinars. We've got one next month about Google Slides designs, and then we have another one about sourcing plants in April. So that's what's happening over here. Thank you so much, Ian, for being here.
Oh,
I got a
yeah.
lot listening to you.
Yeah, it's really nice to be with you all and hear what you have to say.
Yes, totally. I love this community. Like every time we do these office hours or webinars, I'm just like so touched by how everybody's heart's in the right place doing this work. It's like really special community. So thank you for sharing your knowledge.
Yeah.
Ian, can I just say I was chatting with whoever does your Instagram. I don't know if that's you or someone at your
Yeah.
company about a month ago asking about the custom garden plans that you do, and I took a shot and pitched a client on doing a custom garden plan, and they went for it. And so I appreciate your encouragement on that front. And I never would have, I don't know, I never would have thought that someone would pay, $900 for a custom garden plan for the season, but they're going for it. So thank you.
Yeah. Nice. I'm super happy to hear that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Dan. That is an awesome note to end on. Like it is kind of surprising and blows your mind a little bit about what people will pay for this. And it's like, it's what better thing to invest in? It's amazing. So that's
Totally.
great. Cool. All right, guys. Well, thank you. And big thanks to Ian. We really, really appreciate you being here.
Yeah. Thank you all. See you later.
Okay. See you later.
Happy
Bye.
almost spring. Yeah.
Yeah, spring's here. Okay, bye.
Bye.